Hi guys, and many thanks for joining me. If you are new to my channel, hi, I'm Kat and I like to talk about crimes, investigations and all sorts of things. Please don't forget to hit that big red subscribe button below and also make sure you hit the notification bell so you are the first one to know about any new videos I upload. And for my returning subscribers and viewers, I would like to thank you all so much for all your continuous support and all the lovely comments I keep receiving from you. Thank you. Today, because as you can see, it's all Halloweeny here, right? It's Halloween month! Halloween month! And I have to say, this decoration goes brilliantly well with this dress, the original Victorian dress. Oh my god, I think that the Halloween month and the Halloween season, it's a perfect match for Victorian times. Honestly, it is. Yes, anyway, today, because it's Halloween month, today we are talking about, yeah, I know I'm a bit late, yes, I know, I'm sorry. I think a week late, yes, that's fine, don't worry, I don't have a Halloween costume. No, I'm sorry, I don't. But I have Halloween stories for you. Yeah, and today I am going to start with, if you know where I'm from, then this will be an obvious choice for me as a first video. Today I'm talking about Dracula and the legend of vampires. Okay, I really had to do this. So I say, this month, let's take a break from all the usual videos, okay? And keep the spirit of the Halloween in our videos. What do you think? So it's going to be about spooky stories, and let's find out what's real and what's not. I am going to talk about Dracula and how the legend was born, what's real and what's story. Oh, they agree with me. Okay. As I said before, I have decided to go with this as my first video for the Halloween season because obviously the legend comes from my country, from Romania, but now it's known worldwide and many of you are probably asking yourself what's all about, right? Okay, but before we get started, here is the disclaimer. I do not mean to be disrespectful to anyone I talk about in this video. The video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. The information I collect is from the internet. I compile this information, make a video, and from this you guys are more than welcome to draw your own conclusions. Thank you. Right, before... Oh, they started again. That's my cue. So, was there really a blood-sucking vampire living in a castle in Romania in the 1430s? Well, stick on to find out. Right, let's set the scene, okay? This is happening in Transylvania. We are in the 15th century. Grazing and farming are the main activities of the people. Agriculture fills the breadbasket. Shepherding flocks is more than an economic activity, it's the bridge between Romanians in various provinces subjugated by foreign empires and also a factor of cultural emancipation and preservation of values, traditions and Romanian identity. Like the rest of the world at the time, I suppose, grazing, farming and agriculture is the main and most important activity of the 15th century. For centuries, Transylvania was colonized by several populations that shaped its history. Romanians, Hungarians, Saxons, Ottomans, Jews and Roma gypsies inhabited the whimsical territory of the land behind the forests. Hence the name Transylvania, which comes from the Latin trans for across and sylvae for forest. This helped in shaping the local folklore and giving birth to fantastic creatures, magic legends and a fascinating tradition of storytelling. The Piped Piper, or Saxon's arrival in Transylvania. The story starts in the village of Hamelin, where a rat invasion brings terror to the villagers. One day, this man, dressed in moth-eaten clothes, arrives in the village and offers to help solve all the problems with his magic whistle. The villagers don't want him, so he leaves upset but returns on Sunday. He plays his magic instrument and all the children in the village follow him like they are spellbound, as if they are in a trance. The children trip ends in southern Transylvania, where they settle and form the Saxon communities. And here the legend meets reality, because many of the people of Hamelin actually settle in Transylvania in the Middle Ages. Okay, here is another one. Sanzienele. So the way you pronounce this is Sanzienele. The magical fairies. This religious celebration is still being celebrated every year on the 24th of June. This actually has roots in pagan traditions. Sanzienele are gracious fairies which protect nature, and they are represented by yellow flowers which bloom in June. One of the rituals involves young girls hiding the yellow flowers under their pillows in the night of the celebration, which is said to then give them a dream where their beloved future husband would be revealed. Another ritual involved older girls or young women who are not married to make a garland of the same yellow flowers, then throw it on the roof of their home, and if the flowers don't fall off the roof, then they will marry the same year. Sanzienele are represented by girls dressed in white dresses and carrying real flowers crowns or garland on their heads, recreating the whimsical atmosphere of the celebration. I think that the white dress itself represents their pure souls, and the flowers, of course, that they are one with the nature. Then, on the opposite end of these fairies, we have the dark version of the magical fairies, and these are the nymphs called Lele. These evil fairies live in the forests, lonely cliffs and meadows, where they gather to dance hora, a dance which is formed by their hands joining together in a circle. Wherever these dark fairies dance, the grass disappears and the soil is completely burnt. If they drink water from a fountain, anyone who drinks from the same fountain will be ill for the rest of their life. Then there's another one, the children nightmare, called Bao Bao. He is indeed, which I think that actually there is a similar version of Bao Bao in English language, so to speak, which you might know him as the boogeyman. But in Romanian he is called Bao Bao. Anyway, he is a very, very scary man, or a monster if you wish. He's dark and always wears a black cloak. He hides somewhere, usually either a storeroom or the loft, or a cupboard, and whenever children are disobedient, he gets out of his hiding spot and kidnaps them for a whole year. But this is actually a fictional character made up by parents to scare their kids into listening. You know what? I always grew up knowing about Bao Bao, and I have to tell you, he is really scary. He's scary. Okay, are you guys ready for the main thing? Yes, they agree with me yet again. Okay, Vlad III was born in 1431 in Transylvania, a mountain region in modern-day Romania. His father was Vlad II Dracula, ruler of Wallachia, a principality located to the south of Transylvania. I need to switch that off because you won't be able to understand me now. Vlad II was granted the surname Dracula, or Dragon, after his induction into the Order of the Dragon, a Christian military order supported by the Holy Roman Emperor. Situated between Christian Europe and the Muslim lands of the Ottoman Empire, Transylvania and Wallachia were frequently the scene of bloody battles as Ottoman forces pushed westward into Europe and Christian crusaders repulsed the invaders or marched eastward towards the Holy Land. When Vlad II was called to a diplomatic meeting in 1442 with Sultan Murad II, he brought his young sons, Vlad III and Radu, along. But the meeting was actually a trap. All three were arrested and held hostage. The elder Vlad was released under the condition to leave his sons behind. So he had to leave Vlad III and Radu behind. Under the Ottomans, Vlad and his younger brother were educated in science, philosophy and the arts. Vlad also became a skilled horseman and warrior. And according to various information, however, he may also have been imprisoned and tortured for part of that time, during which he would have witnessed the impalement of the Ottomans' enemies. The rest of Vlad's family, however, fared even worse. His father was ousted as ruler of Wallachia by local warlords and was killed in the swamps near Bolteni, Wallachia, in 1447. Vlad's older brother Mircea was tortured, blinded and buried alive. Whether these events turned Vlad III Dracula, son of the dragon, into a ruthless killer is a matter of historical speculation. What is certain, however, is that once Vlad was freed from Ottoman captivity, shortly after his family's death, his reign of blood began. In 1453, the city of Constantinople fell to the Ottomans, threatening all of Europe with an invasion. Vlad was charged with leading a force to defend Wallachia from an invasion. His 1456 battle to protect his homeland was victorious. Legend holds that he personally beheaded his opponent, Vladislav II, in one-on-one combat. Bran Castle is known more as Dracula's Castle. Located in Transylvania, Romania, it's a major tourist attraction. Though he was now ruler of the Principality of Wallachia, his lands were in a ruinous state due to constant warfare and the internal strife caused by feuding warlords. Obviously, they were always in wars at that time. To consolidate power, Vlad invited hundreds of warlords to a banquet. Knowing his authority would be challenged, he had his guests stabbed and their still twitching bodies impaled. Impaling is a particularly gruesome form of torture and death. A wood or metal pole is inserted through the body, either front to back or vertically through the rectum or vagina. The exit wound could be near the victim's neck, shoulders or mouth. In some cases, the pole was rounded, not sharp, to avoid damaging internal organs and thereby prolong the suffering of the victim. The pole was then raised vertically to display the victim's torment. It could take hours or days for the impaled person to die. Though Vlad is widely credited with bringing order and stability to Wallachia, his rule was vicious. Dozens of Saxon merchants in Kronstadt, who were once allied with the warlords, were also impaled in 1459. The Ottoman Turks were never far from Vlad's thoughts or his borders. When diplomatic envoys had an audience with Vlad in 1459, the diplomats declined to remove their hats, citing a religious custom. Commending them on their religious devotion, Vlad ensured that their hats would forever remain on their heads by having the hats nailed to the diplomats' skulls. During one of his many successful campaigns against the Ottomans, Vlad wrote to a military ally in 1462, and I quote, "I have killed peasants, men and women, old and young, who lived at Oblucica and Novoselo, where the Danube flows into the sea. We killed 23,884 Turks, without counting those whom we burned in homes or the Turks whose heads were cut by our soldiers. Thus, Your Highness, you must know that I have broken the peace." End of quote. Vlad's victories over the invading Ottomans were celebrated throughout Wallachia, Transylvania and the rest of Europe. Even Pope Pius II was impressed. But Vlad also earned a much darker reputation. On one occasion, he reportedly dined among a veritable forest of defeated warriors on impaled poles. It is not known whether tales of Vlad III Dracula dipping his bread into the blood of his victims are true, but stories about his unspeakable sadism swirled throughout Europe. In total, Vlad is estimated to have killed about 80,000 people through various means. This includes some 20,000 people who were impaled and put on display outside the city of Târgoviște. The sight was so repulsive that the invading Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II, after seeing the scale of Vlad's carnage and the thousands of decaying bodies being picked apart by crows, turned back and retreated to Constantinople. In 1476, while marching to yet another battle with the Ottomans, Vlad and a small vanguard of soldiers were ambushed, and Vlad was killed and beheaded. By most reports, his head was delivered to Mehmed II in Constantinople as a trophy to be displayed above the city's gates. The Middle Ages were notoriously violent, and the name of Vlad III Dracula may have been just a historical footnote, if not for an 1820 book by the British consul to Wallachia, William Wilkinson, an account of the principalities of Wallachia and Moldavia with various political observations relating to them. Wilkinson delves into the history of the region, mentioning the notorious warlord Vlad Țepeș. Dracula is an 1897 Gothic horror novel by Irish author Bram Stoker. It introduced the character of Count Dracula and established many conventions of subsequent vampire fantasy. The novel tells the story of Dracula's attempt to move from Transylvania to England so that he may find new blood and spread the undead curse, and of the battle between Dracula and a small group of people led by Professor Abraham Van Helsing. Dracula has been assigned to many literary genres, including vampire literature, horror fiction, gothic fiction, and invasion literature. The novel has spawned numerous theatrical, film, and television interpretations. Though Dracula seems like a creation, Stoker in fact drew inspiration from a real-life man with an even more grotesque taste for blood. Vlad III, Prince of Wallachia, or as he is better known, Vlad the Impaler, Vlad Țepeș. Țepeș is the Romanian word for impaler, a name he earned for his favorite way of dispensing of his enemies. Stoker, who never visited Vlad's homeland, was nonetheless known to have read Wilkinson's book. And if ever there were a historical figure to inspire a bloodthirsty, monstrous fictional character, Vlad III the Dracula was the one. Since Transylvania is mostly associated with the land of Dracula and bloodthirsty vampires that sleep during the day and get out at night to suck the blood of their victims, in the local folklore, vampires didn't exist before Stoker's novel. Or at least, they were not called vampires, but strigoi, the undead souls that rise from their graves during the night and haunt the villages, feeding on the blood of the living. The strigoi are usually associated with people who had a violent death, or in the case of a Christian ritual that wasn't fully respected during the funeral. It's believed they are afraid of the garlic and incense odor. In the villages that are supposedly haunted by strigoi, locals grease their doors and windows with garlic and eat as much as they can. The little ones wear a necklace made of garlic cloves while they sleep. Okay, so as a kid, right? I remember going to my grandparents in the countryside, and I specifically remember this particular night because of stag beetles. I remember this precisely because I'm terrified of bugs, okay? So I'm like, what, 10, 11 years old, something like that. It's night and it's dark and it's quite cold outside, right? We had this huge and tall walnut tree in our front garden, and I'm outside. I think I went outside because I heard the cat meowing or something like that. Anyway, I'm standing there under that walnut tree and I see this huge stag beetle, which funny enough, there's a folk name for it. Something with devil. I just can't remember the name for it now. Because the color is black and it's got this sort of claws, which I find petrifying, seriously. And each time I would see this beetle, I would ask myself, if this bites me, how painful will it be? You know, kids' curiosity, those kind of things. Before seeing this beetle though, I look up at the sky. It was a lovely stars-filled sky and the moon was right above. And then, as I look up, I noticed something. It looked like something was dancing in the sky, right? I remember clearly. There were these sort of dots, like circles, and they were in a formation of three, and they kept moving around each other, and they seemed to be dancing in synchrony. They were white in color and quite bright. So I keep looking at them, and then I keep stepping back and back. At this point, I'm terrified because I have no idea what it is, but I'm also curious because a child's curiosity, you know. So I go back one step at a time, and I realize they are following me, but they are still up there. It's sort of, they are still in the same height position, but they are moving towards me as I move back. And then there's some sort of a buzzing sound that they make the closer they get to me. And in the quiet of the night, I can hear them so clearly. And then, as I look down, I see that stag beetle. Oh my God. If you believe me, I was terrified. My skin was crawling. I had goosebumps. Even now, as I'm saying it again and remembering, I'm still getting those goosebumps. And to this day, I have the exact same feeling at the sight of bugs. So I get closer and closer to the door, right? I want to get in. And as I'm opening the door, I look up again to see where those strigoi are gone. They are still dancing above me, and then suddenly they fly away. Yeah, I know that as a kid you might find the normal stuff, you know, terrifying, right? And you might amplify what you actually see, but this stayed in my mind and I see it so clearly. Even now, it's so clear. Oh, okay, so enough of childhood story. Let's get now to modern times, right? 2020. The vampire community. Oh yes, there is a vampire lifestyle based around the mythology of vampires. The members of this community identify themselves as vampires, and they typically take inspiration from pop culture based on vampiric folklore and legends. Practices within this community range from drinking blood from willing donors to organizing groups known as houses and courts of self-identified vampires. There are several types of vampires. Sanguinarians, they consume the blood of others. Psychic vampires claim to attain nourishment from the aura or pranic energy of others in order to balance a spiritual or psychological energy deficiency, such as a damaged aura or chakra. Hybrids both consume blood and assert that they consume psychic energy. Blood donors willingly allow other members of the subculture to drink their blood and may or may not exhibit subservience toward those who do. Blood fetishists use blood as a stimulant or sexual fetish, sometimes drinking it during the course of sadomasochistic sex. Role players acknowledge that they are human beings. They may dress up in vampire clothing, live a vampire lifestyle, like for example sleep in coffins, and primarily participate in RPGs such as Vampire the Masquerade. Then the clinical vampirism, more commonly known as Ranfield syndrome or Ranfield syndrome, is an obsession with drinking blood. The syndrome is named after Dracula's human zoophagous follower R.M. Renfield in the 1897 novel by Bram Stoker. A number of murderers have performed seemingly vampiric rituals upon their victims. Serial killers like Peter Curtin and Richard Trenton Chase were both called vampires in the tabloids after they were discovered drinking the blood of the people they murdered. Similarly, in 1932, an unsolved murder case in Stockholm, Sweden was nicknamed the Vampire Murder due to the circumstances of the victim's death. Clinical vampirism, in the context of criminal acts of violence as well as consensual vampirism as a social ritual, have been extensively documented in the many works of Katharine Ramsland. Others have commented upon the psychiatric implications of vampire cults among adolescents. Tracy Wigginton gained the nickname the lesbian vampire killer in 1989 after committing the murder of a man allegedly to drink his blood. Other crimes have been committed by people believing themselves to be vampires, such as Rod Ferrell, a murderer, and Jonathan Sharkey, who has repeatedly threatened public officials and harassed underage girls. However, the vampire subculture as a whole does not condone violence or crime. Criminal acts on the whole are very rarely associated with the vampiric subculture. So, let's look a bit at the science behind this myth. Throughout the centuries, there have been a number of vampire scares, often tied to widespread disease like the European plague or misunderstood physical deformities. In his book, The Dead Travel Fast, Stalking Vampires from Nosferatu to Count Kokula, Eric Nuzum says that people's beliefs in vampires helped them define things that they didn't understand and couldn't explain, namely, in that particular case and in that time, death and disease. As we know, the medical field was not so developed as it is today. They couldn't recognize all the diseases that happened throughout that time. So as a way of comforting themselves, they were trying to find like a supernatural explanation for the troubles they were in at the time. So it sort of makes sense. I mean, to us it might be, you know, like, what's wrong with those people, right? Because we have everything at our doorstep, so to speak. The medicine field is so advanced that there are so many diseases which are treated, and not only that, but they can be, you know, they can be identified. They have a name. They maybe they have a cure. But anyway, all in all, doctors, they can actually identify the disease, whereas in those times there was no such thing as identifying. Most of the medicine was based on herbal medicine. So of course that people, because they were poor, because they were falling ill very quick, because so many of them were dying, so many of them were starving, they had to find something to believe so they can carry on. But today, vampire myths can very easily be explained with science. The fear from long ago that the dead could still harm the living was only intensified when dead bodies were exhumed and appeared to have blood coming out of their mouths. Without understanding how the body decomposes and what's known as purge fluid, it's so easy to see how people could assume their loved ones had come back from the dead and were drinking people's blood. Many early skeletons from the medieval times have been found with bricks or rocks filling their mouths or sickles around their necks to prevent these dead people from rising up and attacking. So you can see what beliefs people used to have in those times compared to what beliefs people have nowadays. It might sound ridiculous to us, but in those times it's perfectly justified. Some also suggested that vampires were really just people who suffered from porphyria, a condition that makes a person sensitive to sunlight. People with this disease are relegated to the indoors because exposure to light can lead to disfiguring blisters. Daily blood transfusions are sometimes needed as well, and in a time of limited understanding, people were terrified they could catch this condition. Okay. Before I end this video, there's one last thing left for me to ask. Do you believe in vampires? Please leave your answer in the comments below, okay? Thank you so much for watching, guys. Bye for now and stay spooked! I am leaving the links of the books I mentioned in the video in the description below, and also some other stuff. So if you guys are interested in reading these books, or I don't know, buying the books, just having a look at the books, please check the description below as the links will be on there. Thank you.